everybody. I'm Diana. Welcome to this week's episode of Sew in Common. So happy that you could all join me. So if you've been with me for a little while or watched any of my videos in the past, you know that I'm sitting at a different space. I'm not over at the normal cutting table with the normal cameras. I'm here in my embroidery area because we're having a little bit of technical difficulty this week. And it looks like I need to get a new connection wire, which will be here hopefully sometime this week. And that'll fix the problem that we were having today. We've already gone through the video for today twice, and it was completely unusable. So those things happen, right? Technology, and you know, we're still kind of in a learning curve. So no problem, but we're still going to get you this week's video because it is the second part of our autumn runner that we started last week. So although things look a little different, you're still going to get all the information you need to finish up this autumn runner. And I know that all of the ones you're going to make are beautiful. If you enjoy this video or any of my past videos and just haven't done it yet or haven't thought about doing it, please consider subscribing to my channel, Sew in Common, here on YouTube. I also have a couple of other video series, Good Gadgets, where I talk about different gadgets and things and tools and things that we use as quilters and embroiderers and sewists in general. And if you'd like to join our overall group, share your pictures, ask questions, all that kind of stuff, then please join us over at Sew in Common, the group. I know I'm not very, wasn't very creative there, was I? Over on Facebook. That group is open to anyone, but I will let you know you need to answer 3 quick questions when you join, and then you're approved to get in. And the only reason I did that is because I want this group to be a safe place for myself and my fellow stitching friends. And so we did that because a couple of months ago, myself and some other online quilters and embroiderers got hacked. And so it was just one step to make it a little safer. So please don't think it's like the elitist club or anything like that. It's not. You'll get put in. I just need to make sure that you are who you say you are when you try to join because of what happened before. You understand, right? And that's Sew in Common, the group over on Facebook. Great group of people. You'll love getting to know them. You'll love getting to share your photos and your own stories, ask your own questions, that kind of thing. Okay, so for today, we're going to be making the final 2 blocks of the autumn runner. So last week, we made 3 blocks in gingham. Didn't it turn out beautiful? I'll show you the whole piece here. Think I can get that in? Yep, I can. Isn't it lovely how gingham turns out? I really think it's gorgeous. And like I said last week, if you don't want to do autumn colors, if you want to do it in a different color scheme, maybe you don't really decorate in your dining area or anywhere that has a runner during this time of year, then just choose colors that go with the color scheme that you do use. Perfectly fine. And if you are new and you're catching this video, if you're catching this video first, feel free to go back to last week and check out last week's Autumn Runner Part 1, where we go over how to make a gingham block. And I talked to you about how gingham gets made and different things about gingham, and also give you all the information that you need for making those blocks. But today we are going to focus in on the 2 end blocks. So they will go, let me grab some more time. One will go on this end and one will go on this end. So this is quite a long runner, but I like my runners long. I don't like them ultimately too wide, but I like them long, and I like the center, as I told you last week, to be a little bit blank or a little bit non-pieced or fussy, because I like to put stuff on there. I like to put flowers on there. And like right now, I've got a pumpkin that I'm going to put on there, all that kind of stuff. All righty. So you're going to make 2 blocks. I'm now going to give you the information you need to cut from your fabric. You're going to do everything I tell you twice because you're making 2 blocks, right? You get that. All righty. So first of all, we're going to go through all the cuts that you need to have from your background fabric for this week's block. And what I chose to do, and what I would suggest, especially if you've never pieced before, or if you're someone who says, I don't like to go out and pick my own stuff. I want to make what I'm seeing and what you're showing me. So I'm going to give you that information to help you out. But if you are a more experienced quilter and piecer, or someone that likes to be super creative out there and choose your own stuff, then you can certainly do that. So I chose, just to show you, I chose the same fabric for my background for this week's blocks as the lightest fabric that I used in my gingham last week. So see, they're the exact same. So this is this week's background fabric. And you're going to need 2 5.5-inch squares, 1 4.5-inch square, and 2 4-inch squares from your background fabric. And you only need 2 fabrics this week, so not too difficult that way. In fact, this week's block is what we call a figural block, or what I have always called in the last 50-some years a figural block. Means it makes a picture. It's a shape of something. And I'll tell you right now, we're going to make a couple of maple leaves because, autumn and leaves, they go together, right? And so for the leaf itself, I'm calling the second fabric you need the leaf fabric. You could say these are A and B fabrics if you wanted to do letters or something like that. That would be fine too. So I chose for my secondary fabric, my leaf fabric, it's another Kimberbell Basic. And I showed you last week that all of my gingham fabrics are Kimberbell Basics. And so you can see how all of that kind of goes together. Now, if you don't want your leaves to be in the same color family as the gingham was, feel free to choose any other leaf color from autumn. Browns, kind of a faded autumn green, golds, deep burgundies, deep purples. We have neighbors who have this big, huge, beautiful tree. And when it finally turns all its color, it is the most beautiful, deep, dark purple you've ever seen. It's a glorious tree. Everybody in the neighborhood, we all kind of wait for the day that it's turned because it's so pretty. Everybody loves to look at it. So you can make your leaf in whatever color you want, but I chose to stay in the same color family for this. So out of your leaf fabric, you're going to need 2 5.5-inch squares, just like we needed out of the background fabric. And then you're going to need 4 4.5-inch squares. Now, here is where you can have a secondary choice if you like. If you want the stem of your leaf to be brown or black or dark green, some other color than the leaf itself, then cut 3 4.5-inch squares out of your leaf fabric and 1 4.5-inch square out of whatever that other color is. Okay, that's entirely up to you. I'm just doing the whole thing in this color. Okay, it's not that big a deal to me that there's a lot of color differentiation, but for you, if there is, then you can follow that second choice. Okay. All righty. That's all the fabric you need. And like I said, you're going to need that times 2 because we're going to be making 2 leaves, 2 maple leaf blocks. So the first thing that we're going to do, let me explain a little bit, since I'm not technically at my sewing machine and we don't have any other cameras today because of all of this tech problems that were going on. I've got pieces cut out and all, and I'm going to do my best to show them to you, but you're not going to see actual sewing. For this first one, we're going to make half square triangles. If you need more information on how to make these other than what I can show you, given the setup we have right now, please visit my quilting library video series here on YouTube. And any of the blocks that have a half square triangle in them, just go to that video and I will in those videos, you will see the entire process that I'm talking about for making these, okay? Because I always demonstrate it, because some folks might be new, or some folks may not have ever done this technique before. And I want you to be able to see it. But given the situation today, I can't visually show you everything, but I'm going to try and talk you through it. But that's a place where you can go, and like I said, any of those videos that have half square triangles in them, watch those and you'll see how to make this with the visual, because I wanted to make sure and put that out there for any of our visual learners, because it's very important, I know, to be able to see something visually if you learn visually. Okay, so what you need to do right now is take both of your 5.5-inch background blocks and both of your 5.5 leaf blocks and put them into sets of 2. So 1 background, 1 leaf, and you'll have 2 sets, just like this, okay? On the back, because these are all going to be facing each other, right sides together, on the back of your background block, you want to make a line from this corner down to this corner diagonally. There we go. Okay. Then you're going to, after you've marked those 2 blocks, you're going to stack them together so that they look like this. Then you're going to go to your sewing machine and you are going to sew. You can pretend that that other block is behind her. They just won't stick on here stacked up. You're going to go to your sewing machine and you are going to stitch 1/4 inch away from this line on the left side and 1/4 inch away from this line on the right side. So this line will now be directly in the middle of your 2 sewn lines, okay? If you use a tool called a magic wand, which I always show you in a lot of the videos, then what you would do is you would line it up on the diagonal like this, and you would draw your line on each side, and those lines would be the lines you actually sew on. But if you're doing this technique, you're going to sew 1/4 inch from one side and 1/4 inch from the other side. When you're done, you're going to come back to your cutting area and you are going to cut these sets right on that center line. Or if you're using the magic wand, you're going to cut right down the center. Okay? And then what you'll end up with is 2 triangle pieces that look like this. Okay. Once you unfold them and press them, you'll end up with 4 half square triangles, 2 from one set and 2 from another. Now, I'm trying to make sure I put this back on here the right way. The way all of these half square triangles need to be squared up to 4.5 inches, okay? So what I do, hang on, let me just grab the piece that I use, the template that I use. You can see all of my embroidery stuff behind me. So when I square up before I open them. I square up when they still look like this. And I use a template called a Quilt in the Day Square Up Ruler. It's actually called a Quilt in the Day 6.5-inch triangle square up ruler. Okay. So what I do, I'm going to try and get this set up so you can see how this would work. Because I really feel that this system gives you the most accurate squared up triangles, half square triangles. So you would still have some of your half square triangles sticking out over here and sticking out over here because this one has already been squared up. And then you would trim here and trim here, and you would end up with this beautifully done half square triangle. Then you would, you would go to your ironing board and you would press to the dark side and come up with your half square triangles. And like I said, you're going to end up with 4 of them. And let me just tell you that with this 6.5-inch square up ruler, you could ask at your local fabric shop to see if they have them or if they could order them for you. So we always like to support our local businesses. Or if you can't find it through a local business, I know that you can get these on Amazon. Okay. And this particular one, comes with instructions, really nice instructions, but on the back, what I like is it comes with these 2 little charts. One is for half square triangles, one is for quarter square triangles, so you don't have to do the math. I like that a lot. So I keep it right behind this over at my cutting table so that if I'm working away and I need to check something, I can check it right there. It's very nice and convenient. So you're going to end up with 4 half square triangles trimmed up to 4.5 inches each, and you can set those aside. Now you want to take whatever 4.5-inch square you chose to be your stem. So I'm just using my leaf fabric, but you may have decided to use a brown, a black, a dark green, anything like that. And you're going to lay it down so it's right side up, just like that, okay? Then you're going to take the 2 4-inch background squares that you cut, 2 4-inch ones. You're going to place one of them on top of this square so that right sides are together. And what you're going to do is you're going to put the bottom left corners together so that they match up right along the edges. Now this might be backwards too. This might be on the other side, but so this is your bottom left-hand corner. Okay. What you want to do with that square is you want to draw a line diagonally right down the center, kind of like you did for your half square triangles. Okay. Then you want to take this set over to your sewing machine and you want to sew right on top of that line from diagonal corner to diagonal corner. When you come back to your cutting machine or to your cutting table, cutting machine, you might have a cutting machine, I don't know. You want to, where's my, I didn't bring my regular ruler, so I'll use my little magic wand. It'll be the same way. You want to put the 1/4-inch line directly on that line you just sewn, and you want to cut off this bottom set. So it's going to look like, I know I have that sitting here. No, I brought those over. Where did they go? I know I brought those over. Onto the floor. Oh gosh, hang on, guys. Maybe I didn't bring them over. Let me check. Oh, I didn't actually. Let me grab them really quickly. When you get discombobulated, sometimes you forget stuff, right? You know how that is. So when you cut that edge off, you're going to end up with 2 triangles. Don't pitch them out because you're technically getting a bonus half square triangle that you can put in your scrap bin and use later. And I'll tell you how I do these. So let me move this out of the way real quick and put this on here. So you're getting these 2 half square triangles. Just while you're sitting at your sewing machine, just come over a 1/4 inch and make a 1/4 inch seam. And you will end up, you'll have to square it up a little bit, but you'll end up with basically a 3-inch half square triangle. You're going to end up with 2 of them because you're doing this twice. You'll actually, because you're doing both blocks, you're going to end up with 4 of these bonus squares. I love that. So when I do this, excuse me, I will go and put all of these into my scrap bin that are half square triangles. So when I need a corner square block, half square triangle block, or if I want to make a very scrappy star or anything, a full scrappy quilt, I've got all of these half square triangles ready to go. There's no reason to throw that away. That's a perfectly good usable piece. You're going to end up with 4 of them because you're making 2 blocks. Okay. 2 of the leaf blocks. So once you get that cut, then you're going to flip your, I'm just going to pin mine together right here since I'm not at my sewing machine. When you pin it back, it'll look like this. Okay. Now, you want to take your other 4-inch square, again, make a mark from diagonal to diagonal, and you want to put this square in the bottom right-hand corner. Let me make sure I've got that right. I do. Okay, good. So you want this one lined up in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll have your diagonal line there, and you're going to go and sew it just like you did the first time. And you are going to then cut off this bottom part. You're going to make a 1/4 inch. You're going to come a 1/4 inch away from that sewn line and cut that off. And you are going to end up with your block that looks like this. It's going to be your stem block. It's going to look just like that. Pretty cool, huh? So if you chose a different fabric for your stem, now you can see it will be right there. And just make sure this should be trimmed up to 4.5 inches already, but just make sure you've got that trimmed up to 4.5 inches. So that was my little sample that I was showing you that I pinned to there. Those are the only blocks that you have to like pre-make. Everything else are our solid squares. So let's bring in my board with our, that's what our block is going to look like, okay? So right now, it's going to look just like this. So right now, I'm going to go over with you how this layout works, okay? Because now we're ready to lay it out, sew our rows together, attach our rows, and then we're going to square it up. Should be squared up to probably 12 inches. I believe that's what we ended up with on the gingham. I actually had to trim my gingham down a little bit. I ended up with a problem on one block, so I trimmed it down a little bit. So I think mine are technically 11.5, but yours should be 12 inches. So let's bring this back up again. Don't you love these design boards? Yeah, I love them. I've been using them forever. They're just a couple that I've made. I think I even have a video out there on how you can make these too if you want to. So a 4.5 inch solid background square in the upper left corner. Oops. Let me turn this so it's the right way. Sorry. In the upper left corner. Then you're going to take 1 half square triangle block and make sure that the leaf is in the bottom left half. And then your next half square triangle is going to be in the same orientation as this one. Bottom left half. Okay. Then we're going to come down to our second row, and we're going to start that row. We're going to start that row with a half square triangle. And the leaf fabric is going to be in the upper right half. So upper right. Our center square is going to be our 4.5 inch leaf fabric solid block. And then the next solid square is also from our leaf fabric, 4.5 inches. Then we're going to move down to our bottom row, and you're going to start on the left side with a half square triangle, and it's going to be in the same orientation as this one was, with your leaf fabric in the upper right half. Then you're going to have your last solid square, and then you're going to have your stem square that we just finished making. Now, make sure that when you go to sew your stem square together, that it's not like that. Ask me how I know, because I've sewn them together like that before, and then you have to take it out and, then you get out the seam ripper, and we don't want to have to do that. So it'll be just like that. So once you have your layout complete, sew each square together in each row, and then sew this row to this row and this row to this row. Press and then square up, and then you can attach it to the end, one of the ends of your gingham that was already made. Now, for those of you that are new to piecing, your seam width in all of these seams that you're going to sew should be 1/4 of an inch. That's kind of standard for quilting. And I used a 1.8 stitch length. I have gone to making my stitch length a little bit smaller, and I find I like it a little bit more. However, kind of a standard stitch length is a 2 to 2.5. And if that's what you want to use, that's perfectly fine. I would not go below a 1.6. In fact, I think a 1.6 is probably a little bit small, but a 1.8 I found I really like that. And so that's what I've used for all my squares, and that's what I'll use for my main row seams as well. So you will end up with 2 blocks that look like this, that are a maple leaf. You will add one of them to one end of your gingham and one to the other end of your gingham. Let me see if I can kind of lay this on here a little bit so you can kind of see. Mine isn't sewn together, so it's quite a bit wider. But let's see if we can make it. So one to one end and one to the other end. Once it's all done, you've pressed it, it's all complete. Your table topper then needs to be quilted, right? So let's talk about quilting a little bit, especially for new folks, because that's the other half of making a project like this, or of making a quilt. This topper was pieced, that's what we call piecing, and then we quilt it. So to quilt it, we need to make what we call a quilt sandwich. So a quilt sandwich is your top, then your batting underneath that, and then your backing fabric underneath that. For batting, I like an 80-20 batting for projects like this, or even for projects like this, a fusible fleece would work just fine. I'm not going to talk as if I'm doing it for a big quilt, because that's a whole different discussion. But that's the kind of batting I would use for a product like this, or a project like this. And for my backing fabric, I just use a plain muslin. Hang on, let me grab one for you. I think I have them all over here. Muslins. Maybe I don't. Okay. Well, it seems like I don't have a muslin available, but a muslin is just it's just kind of an inexpensive light beige fabric. You can get it at any fabric store, and I use that for my backing. However, if you want your backing to be really pretty, a pretty fabric, choose any of the fabrics that you used in your gingham and use that for your backing, okay? And make sure that your batting and your backing are about 2 inches wider on all sides than your top. And why is that? When we go to quilt, especially if we're quilting on our domestic machines, you can get slippage. And it might just be a little slippage, but you never want to risk the fact that your top is going to go outside of your backing and batting. So let's say we made our backing and batting exactly the same size as this, and it slipped by 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. You're going to have an area that's going to have no backing and batting on it, right? So that's going to cause a problem. So just always make sure on small projects like this, I tend to go 2 inches. That usually tends to be plenty. If I'm doing a larger quilt, I tend to do 3 to 4 inches bigger. And there's reasons for that, which is, again, another discussion for another day. Regarding the quilting itself, so a lot of you know I've quilted for well over 50 years. And when I started out quilting, everything was marked with a pencil and stitched by hand. Okay. But with technology and time, we don't do a lot of hand quilting anymore. I still like to do some hand quilting now and again. I still enjoy that. Still makes me feel closer to my grandmother who taught me to quilt. But you can quilt on your embroidery machine. And can I tell you that I probably quilt most of my quilts on my embroidery machine anymore? You can quilt on your regular sewing machine by doing what's called stitching in the ditch or sewing down the seam lines. You can do free motion quilting where you drop the feed dogs on your machine and you put on a free motion foot and then you guide it around and you make patterns that way. You could do that. You could also do like really specific types of free motion quilting where like on this part you want one design and this part another design, and you could do that. Or you could use quilting rulers. That's another product that you still use that free motion foot with, and it has to be it needs to be 1/4 inch thick so that you don't end up breaking the feet and the needles and all of that. But you might be somebody who's wanted to try that or who does that. So this is a great project for using quilting rulers. So you could do any kind of quilting you want on this. And although we have a pieced block on each end in our leaves, you don't have to worry about messing this up if you quilt over the top of it. I know a lot of quilters get concerned that if I quilt over a figural block, then it's going to it won't look right. It'll look, messy or something. That's not true at all. So on this block, what you could do is you could do a little design in all these solid blocks. But in all honesty, I wouldn't get super picky with how I do this. On mine, in fact, I'll tell you, on my whole piece, it's going to be one all over design. It's going to be quilted on my quilting or on my embroidery machine. You could technically take this piece to a long arm quilter, but let me just say something. Long arm quilters are wonderful. There's a reason for them to be because of the way that we have kind of rearranged the whole art of quilting in the modern day. And so thank you to everyone out there that has taken the time to buy and learn and do long arm quilting, because it is a true art form in and of itself. But on a small piece like this, I'm going to highly recommend, that you try to quilt it yourself. Your quilting does not have to be fancy or super dense. It can be loose and a big all over pattern. It can just be stitch in the ditch. All you're doing with quilting is holding those 3 layers, that quilt sandwich, together. So don't worry about it. It will be beautiful, whatever you do. If you are new to quilting and you're like, well, what if I make mistakes? Can I just tell you, after 50-some years of quilting, I make a mistake on every quilt I make, still to this day. It's just, you do. Everybody does. Don't worry about it. No one's going to see that little bitty stitch mistake but you. So don't worry about it. You could use this as a piece to practice your free motion quilting on your machine, or to try out doing embroidery quilting, which you'll love if you have an embroidery machine. So don't be worried. Try it yourself. Get used to the idea of doing your own quilting, especially on your small pieces. I quilt all my pieces. I don't send any of them to a long armor, but it's not because, oh, I have something against long armors. I don't at all. I just enjoy the whole process of quilting from beginning to end. So I do them myself. And trust me, you'll have mistakes, but don't worry about it. Nobody will know they're there but you, and in the end, they won't matter. All right. Then once you've done your quilting, of course, you're going to trim off all that extra batting and backing to the edge of your piece, edge of your top, and then you're going to do your binding. And there are several different ways for binding. Use whatever technique you enjoy. I will be doing here really soon, I decided, a binding video on some of the techniques you can use to help out anyone that's new, or to help out anyone that has been wanting to try a different binding technique. So we'll be doing that really soon. So I know that this video was a little different than normal for demonstration purposes, but thank you so much for hanging in there with me and walking through this process. Hopefully next week we'll have this new wire cord that we need, and next week we'll be back to our regular camera setup. But again, if you enjoyed this video, please click subscribe to my channel, click like on the video, and make sure and click the little bell so they'll let you know when I put out more content. Until the next time, remember what I say every time is quilters do one thing really well. We sew life beautiful. So go do that. I know you can. I look forward to seeing pictures over in Sew in Common of your finished table runners. And as soon as I get my leaves attached to this one, I'll post my picture over there as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next week, take care and sew life beautiful. Bye now.